Apart from life, a strong constitution, and an abiding connection to the Timber Royal House, the only thing my father bestowed upon me at birth was a name, Holishlashla. In Xhosa, Holishlashla literally means pulling the branch of a tree, but its colloquial definition could more accurately be termed troublemaker. I do not believe that names are destiny, but in later years friends and relatives would jestingly ascribe to my birth name the many storms I have both caused and weathered. I was born on the 18th of July, 1918, at Mvezo, a tiny village on the banks of the Mbashe River, in the district of Mthatha, the capital of the Transkei, and what was then the British colony of South Africa. The Transkei is 800 miles east of Cape Town, 550 miles south of Johannesburg, and lies between the Kei River and the Natal border, between the rugged Drakensberg Mountains to the north and the blue waters of the Indian Ocean to the east. It is a beautiful country of rolling hills, fertile valleys, and 1,000 rivers and streams which keep the landscape green even in winter. The Transkei is the largest territorial division within South Africa, covering an area about the size of Switzerland, with a population of about 3.5 million Xhosas and a tiny minority of Basutus and whites. It is the home of the Timber people, who are part of the Xhosa nation of which I am a member. My father, Gadla Henry Mpakwanizwa, was chief by both blood and custom. He was confirmed as chief of Mvezo by the king of the Timber tribe, but under British rule his selection had to be ratified by the government, which in Mvezo took the form of the local magistrate. All told, my father had 4 wives, the third of whom, Nosokeni Fanny, was my mother. He was an acknowledged custodian of Xhosa history and advisor to kings. He was also a kingmaker. When Jongi Lizwe, the former king, died in 1922, his infant son, Shabata, was too young to ascend to the throne. A dispute arose as to who should succeed him. My father recommended a relative named Jongintaba, and his recommendation was ultimately accepted by both the Timbus and the British government. In time, Jongintaba would return the favor in a way that my father could not then imagine. The Xhosa are a proud and patrilineal people with an expressive and euphonious language and an abiding belief in the importance of laws, education, and courtesy. I am a member of the Madiba clan, named after a Timber chief who ruled in the Transkei in the 18th century. I am often addressed as Madiba, my clan name, a term of respect. Although over the decades there have been many stories and rumors that I was in the line of succession to the Timber throne, those tales are myths. Although I was a member of the royal household, I was not among the privileged few who were trained for rule. Instead, I was groomed to counsel the rulers of the tribe. From an early age, I spent most of my free time in the veld, playing and fighting and working with the other boys of the village. At night, I shared my food and blanket with these same boys. I was no more than 5 when I became a herd boy, looking after sheep and calves in the fields. I learned of the almost mystical attachment that Xhosas have for cattle, not only as a source of food and wealth, but as a blessing from God and a source of happiness. It was in the fields that I learned how to knock birds out of the sky with a slingshot, to gather wild honey and fruits and edible roots, to drink warm, sweet milk straight from the udder of a cow, to swim in the clear, cold streams and pools, and to catch fish with twine and sharpened bits of wire. I learned to stick fight, essential knowledge to any rural African boy, and became adept at his various techniques, parrying blows, feigning in one direction and striking in another, breaking away from an opponent with quick footwork. From these days I date my love of the veldt, of open spaces, the simple beauties of nature, the clean line of the horizon, and even today when I dream of rest and respite, my mind drifts back to the hills and fields. On my first day of school, my teacher, Miss Ndingani, gave each of us an English name and said that from thenceforth that is the name we would answer to in school. This was the custom among Africans in those days, and was undoubtedly due to the British bias of our education. The education I received was the British education in which British ideas, British culture, British institutions were automatically assumed to be superior. There was no such thing as African culture. That day, Miss Ndingani told me that my new name was Nelson. One night when I was 9 years old, I was aware of a commotion in the household. My father was in my mother's hut, lying on his back on the floor, in the midst of what seemed like an endless fit of coughing. Even to my young eyes, I sensed that my father was not long for this world. He was ill with some type of lung disease, but it was not diagnosed, as my father had never visited a doctor. He remained in the hut for several days without moving or speaking, and then one night he took a turn for the worse. My mother and my father's youngest wife, Nodayimani, who had come to stay with us, were looking after him, and late that night he called for Nodayimani. "Bring me my tobacco," he told her. My mother and Nodayimani conferred and decided that it was unwise that he have tobacco in his current state, but he persisted in calling for it, and eventually Nodayimani filled his pipe, lit it, and then handed it to him. My father smoked and became calm. He continued smoking for perhaps an hour, and then, his pipe still lit, he died. I do not remember experiencing great grief so much as feeling cut adrift. My father's passing changed my whole life in a way I did not suspect at the time. After a brief period of mourning, my mother informed me that I would be leaving the village. I did not ask her where I was going or why. I packed the few things that I possessed, and early one morning we set out on a journey westward to my new residence. We traveled by foot and in silence until the sun was sinking slowly toward the horizon. But the silence of the heart between mother and child is not a lonely one. My mother and I never talked very much, but we did not need to. I never doubted her love or questioned her support. It was an exhausting journey, along rocky dirt roads, up and down hills, past numerous villages, but we did not pause. Late in the afternoon, at the bottom of a shallow valley, surrounded by trees, we came upon a village, at the center of which was a large and gracious home, which so far exceeded anything I had ever seen that all I could do was marvel at it. The buildings consisted of 2 inklane, or square houses, and 7 stately rondavels, all washed in white lime, dazzling even in the light of the setting sun. This was the great place, Nkeswini, the provincial capital of Timberland, the royal residence of Chief Jogintaba Dalinjebo, acting regent of the Timber people. I learned later that in the wake of my father's death, Jogintaba had offered to become my guardian. He would treat me as he treated his other children, and I would have the same advantages as they. My mother had no choice. One did not turn down such an overture from the regent. She was satisfied that although she would miss me, I would have a more advantageous upbringing in the regent's care than in her own. The regent no doubt remembered that it was due to my father's intervention that he had become acting paramount chief. My mother offered no sermons, no words of wisdom, no kisses. I suspect she did not want me to feel bereft at her departure, and so was matter of fact. Her tender look was all the